Hey, this is another kind of off-the-cuff shorter review. Probably going to be shorter. We'll see how it cuts together. Here's the deal. Normally there's a written out or at least outlined component to these because I've collected some thoughts on this. The review embargo on this came down, but just as we were going to print on this one or to record on this one, Publicist sent out another follow-up on this that, well, the review embargo is down. The spoiler embargo is not down until the movie actually comes out, which I don't think we've ever seen this come out before. Which is, okay, whatever. Take the invite to the press screening, you abide by the rules of the press screening, fair. Okay, so I'm going to do the spoiler-free, off-the-cuff, hey, here's an immediate reaction review first, get into the longer stuff later, and see how that goes if people are, interested in that. Which paradoxically means that this shorter off-the-cuff one is coming out later than it otherwise would have if I'd known that up front. What these things happen, it's the business. In any case, Ant-Man 3, Quantumania, here we go again. We're back in with another new Marvel movie, which means that no matter what, all of the review stuff is inevitably bound up in the tiresome culture war bullshit about Marvel stuff. Is it still relevant? Is there Marvel fatigue, superhero fatigue? Did it peter out after Endgame? None of which, unless you're a Disney investor, you should really give a shit about. I don't really give a shit about outside of the professional obligation to talk about it, but the question is the movie good? It's fine. It's a Marvel movie. Most of them are basically fine. The reason that this is a successful movie studio is they basically mastered the fine art of producing high quality B+ movies the majority of the time. Occasionally there's an A or an A+ movie. Once in a while they slip up and they put out Thor: The Dark World, Iron Man 2, like a C+, C- movie. Most of the time, high B+ average. That's why this has endured. You get your Black Panther, you get your Avengers movies, or at least the first and the third and the fourth one, high A movies. I would call Original Iron Man, a few of the others like A movies, but mostly this is the higher end of average 3.0 GPA movies. That's the secret to why this works. The Ant-Man movies are the definition of the Marvel solid B+ movie, and this is another solid B+ movie. I would toss it up as to whether or not it's better than the first Ant-Man in terms of being like the best of the Ant-Man movies. I imagine that there will be a certain all but inevitable come down on this one from general reviews already seeing it, because this is another of they're calling it the start of Phase 5. Obviously, like every big movie that takes, multiple years to shoot, this is something that was being shot during COVID several years ago, had its production blown apart by that, so we're going to continue getting this successive wave of big movies that were weird and tonally disjointed feeling because they are part of these interconnected projects that have been twisted up and warped by that whole experience. And in the case of this one, it's extremely clear for a number of narrative reasons that are probably part of the spoiler stuff. We're going to try to avoid here. It's resoundingly clear if you've watched the other previous year or two of the Marvel stuff that this was probably originally written and intended and set up to come out in the middle of the last wave of movies instead of being the launch of this fifth wave of stuff. Like, it's hitting a lot of the same thematic beats about, hey, new young heroes, differences between old generation, young generation, all time lost between the people getting dusted wave of the Endgame stuff. In fact, if I had to describe it in oblique non-spoiler terms, it is basically an Ant-Man movie that is a narrative sequel to the first season of Loki, but is a thematic sequel to Falcon and the Winter Soldier, of all things, which will make more sense with the actual plot details, which I'm gonna mostly pass over here, which is a bizarre way to go for the Ant-Man movies, which are generally the opposite of big and elaborate and epic, which is the point here, doing a big elaborate war between multiple alien creature groups thing, which is not Ant-Man's space at all, so of course he's out of place in it, and that's the story, which at one point was probably supposed to be a bigger, more direct part of this plot, but which now takes itself more serious than the Ant-Man movies usually do, because this has been reconfigured from Ant-Man is stuck in the middle of Marvel bullshit, how does he get out this time, to Ant-Man is launching an entire new phase of Marvel stuff, so it has to be more direct about it. I would say that the movie itself is still a fun, interesting ride of a thing. General plot-wise, if you've seen the trailer, you know the general premise. All of the main characters of Ant-Man get accidentally shrunk all the way down into that subcellular universe stuff that has been hinted at in the other movies. They're calling it the quantum realm in this version, where, as it turns out, while Michelle Pfeiffer's character was trapped there for 30 years, there had been a war between various little microorganism creatures native there, and a mystery character played by Johnathan Majors, who the ads have gone all the way out and just told everyone, hey, this is Kang the Conqueror, the bad guy from comics. Get worried about him because we're setting him up as the new bad guy. It feels like at one point in the development of this movie, this was supposed to be a big surprise in the middle of the movie, which is another way you can tell that they started making this, or at least setting this up, way before they knew what order these were going to come out. But in any case, there's a bad guy who is living down here who has been doing bad stuff, and there are other little guys who are resisting him. Ant-Man gets caught up in the middle of it, and they have to go against him. That's basically the setup of it, with implications that this big bad guy, who seems very, very threatening, and because he's appeared in other things up to this point we know is very threatening, is going to get out and do more damage stuff. And I would say that they probably have made a bit of an error in marketing this as coming right out and telling everyone, this is the beginning of the new Marvel Universe, the start of a new dynasty, you've got to see this. When ultimately this is a just under 2 hours, good guys fighting bad guys, heroes teamed up with a bunch of weird little alien collect our action figures guys fighting a bunch of nasty guys who work for a big bad guy. And that's sort of it. It's a fun action adventure, storm the castle, save people, fight the bad guys movie with Marvel guys participating in it. It almost feels like they do a very good job of setting up, hey, here's a little world, here's a bunch of weird little guys in this world that the Ant-Man characters are just visiting for a moment and get involved and muck everything up in. And so I don't necessarily blame if people come out of this going, okay, well, I was told this was basically another Avengers movie, but only with the Ant guys, but in another mindset of just, hey, it's Ant-Man, but this time we are doing micro-sized creature war weird stuff. It's a perfectly fun experience, and I had a good time with it. You know, Paul Rudd is great in these movies. He's the exact guy. This wouldn't work with Iron Man. Iron Man's too cool in this stuff. The Captain America character is too noble. You could probably pull this off with Thor, but I think no one would really buy that he doesn't just take care of everything right away. The Guardian, there's too many of them. So this is the perfect guy to throw into this situation where it's someone who is completely over his head until he's not, mostly because he doesn't think to use his stuff right away. It's a brilliant move to finally throw Michael Douglas and Michelle Pfeiffer directly into the action the whole time. Just exactly the amount of just attached enough humor but not parody sort of gags that work so well in these movies. Like, if the number one takeaway that they want people to have of overhyping the fact that this is the movie where we fully roll out Johnathan Majors as Kang, is Johnathan Majors as Kang, then they're going to get that out of it. Because even if you come away from this saying, well, I didn't love this so much as an Ant-Man movie or an individual movie, this is definitely a huge like Tom Hiddleston as Loki level debut for the proper version of this character. Because yes, we've seen him do an alternate version of it in Loki, but this is a real holy shit. Like, if you've never seen Johnathan Majors in a movie before, and you should have seen him in other things because he is great. He's going to be in Creed 3 coming up. He was also in Lovecraft Country. He's been in very cool stuff. This guy is a hell of an actor, hell of a presence. And here's the thing about this. I was super, super skeptical about the Marvel movies doing anything with the character concept of Kang the Conqueror, because Kang the Conqueror is just the most boring fucking character in the, like, conceptual, he's interesting. It's the time travel bad guy who does the time travel stuff that other time travel bad guys don't do. His design in the comics is kind of bland. He's just a purple guy. He wants to rule. Why? Because he wants to. What are his powers? Very strong. Where is he? How far in the future is he from? Far. But, like, the only way that this was ever going to work without completely reinventing it is to just have the most charismatic person you can find just show up and just be an awesome version of this. And they did, because this guy just shows up and says, well, hi, yeah, I've got the most presence you've ever seen in one of these movies, and I'm just going to stand around and own everyone, and it works. I really think it's a great pivot after all of the business with Thanos and the various other villains who have often been kind of like standoff, make demands of characters, and then go out in a CGI light show. To have a guy who can do that, and then also have people just get fed up and get into a fist fight with him, and then say, oh, okay, so he can just do that too. Okay, all right, this is different. You know, you can buy him as the ranting overlord guy, and also as the, no, I will just beat the shit out of you guy. You know, I think people are really going to come away from this going, even if they think it's an average movie, or, you know, above it, or even if they don't like it, will come away from this thinking like, yeah, but that guy owns. We also get MODOK, who is, I don't know that there was ever going to be a way to make MODOK work visually, because MODOK is a big floating head, and a big floating head that's not like a CGI cartoon character was always going to look ridiculous, and he looks ridiculous. On the other hand, I got to see an actual actor with a big floating head and little baby legs and arms. It looks like MODOK. I don't know what people are expecting MODOK to look like. MODOK is a ridiculous, stupid character, and I love that I got to see this ridiculous, stupid thing in a movie. And it looks cool while also looking completely stupid. So while avoiding spoilers, I think that this is, as all movies made during COVID or made adjacent to franchises that have been blown apart by the pandemic era, and nothing is more evident in that than the Marvel movies have been. At least until we have to finally watch the Flash movie and see what the fuck that thing probably looks like. It's a weird, messy movie made weird and messier by its circumstances. I had a good time with it. There are giant ants. Michael Douglas has somehow once again proven that he can be awesome in, you know, multiple successive generations of movies, showing up and delivering just the strangest lines of dialogue, completely straight-faced. Paul Rudd is giving a very sincere version of the character arc that they've handed him, which is very tied into what you can tell was at one point supposed to be like the main arc of the surviving Avengers from Phase 4, which has now been sort of like dropped in as his main arc to begin Phase 5, and tie-ins back to Black Panther of all things. So there is a lot to chew on here. I don't think it's a flawless movie. It does feel at once a little too big for its own good, and yet also, paradoxically, a little too small for what it's trying to accomplish. But I love all of the weird little alien guys. I think the action is really cool. Component-wise, I had like an 8 out of 10 level of fun. I think that from the amount of stuff that doesn't exactly hang together, but is trying to, it's probably close to a 7 out of 10, so that's where I'm gonna go for it. But I think that it's, you know, nobody needs these things to be recommended or not recommended. People watch them at this point, even if they don't like them. Worth seeing. Look forward to talking more about it. Yeah, that's the non-spoiler version. Have a good one.